What's up, guys? Welcome back to Not Another Tech Podcast, where we talk all things Microsoft security and whatever else tickles our fancy this week. As always, I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts, Andy and Steve. How are you guys?
Yeah, good, thanks.
That awkward pause for a moment there where we decide who talks first.
Love it, love it, love it. And for those of you watching, you will have noticed that we have another guest with us today, our second guest on the show, but our first international guest. Jon, it's awesome to have you on. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey guys, so I'm Jon Hope. I'm an M365 solution architect over at Enforcer, a company that specializes in 365 security solutions around hardening the entire M365 stack. And the number one NATP fan. So happy to be here. Super excited. Let's go. It'll be awesome.
Love it. So I've been desperate to get you on, Jon. We've been speaking for a little while now on LinkedIn and eventually on Discord. Why don't we start with a little bit of a trip down memory lane? You can give us a little bit of a backstory into, I guess, how you ended up entwined in the Microsoft community, and I guess eventually how you ended up at Enforcer, which is where you are now, right?
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. My journey's a long one. Similar to kind of Andy and your guys' first episode, right? We could get into some fun BPOS conversations if we wanted to. But yeah, I've been in the MSP space here in the States for 15 years. So started about 15 years ago at a company here in Virginia, which is where I'm located. And essentially what I did is I worked my way up through engineering. I've got a long history of VMware specialty, so multiple VMware certifications. Kind of took MSP customers of our MSP on the journey from physical to virtual. And then inevitably, from that virtualization, COVID was kind of a game changer, I think, for a lot of people. And so our organization, we actually merged with a much larger organization called New Charter Technologies. And soon after that, we decided to go all cloud. So we started we managed an on-prem VMware data center, and we decided to take every one of our clients and move them into Azure. That was kind of a huge undertaking for me. So for about 5 years, that was my focus, my day in, day out focus. I was migrating medical clients, EMR systems, big AVD. So obviously I love the AVD and 365 cloud PC discussions you guys have. But yeah, so that was kind of the bread and butter. And what inevitably ended up happening was I did one very manual. And I realized that infrastructure as code was critical to how I operated. I had to be able to create a repeatable structure over and over again. So I really dove into Bicep and built out an entire framework using Bicep infrastructure as code to stamp down Azure infrastructure. Very cool stuff. Would love to talk more about that at some point. But that's basically what I did. And once I finally moved all of our new clients, we kind of took a step back and realized our 365 environments don't have the same security that like our Azure environments have. And that was kind of eye-opening. I was day to day, like in the weeds of Bicep. And I realized there's not a lot of ties from Bicep, right, into the Entra side of the house and all the M365 solutions. So this is actually kind of how I moved over to Enforcer, but inevitably what I did is my company asked me to build out a conditional access framework. They were like, how do you recommend we start securing identities at scale? And I was like, we need to focus in on our conditional access. It was a mess. And so I started looking at some open source ways to do that. There are some tools I used, Daniel Krunlaud's DC Toolbox. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar. Yep. So I started using that, and then I started looking really heavily at 365 DSC, and I was like, okay, I can do this, right? I just automated all this stuff with Azure. I can definitely dig in and automate this. And then I was like, why am I doing that? Like, what is like? I spent so much time doing all this other stuff. I was like, there's got to be someone in the industry that's done this. And I was at a conference, and I ended up coming across Enforcer, and they kind of wowed me. They showed me. I was like, hey, I have these 35 conditional access policies. thanks to me watching too many of your videos with Runate. So that was kind of how I got that. But yeah, no, you'll notice some policies in there if I show you here in a minute. I'll share on my screen. You'll be like, oh, that's interesting. That looks kind of like mine.
I recognize that one, yeah.
Yeah. But essentially, what happened was they showed me the product. I kind of fell in love with it and started realizing like, holy crap, this is actually really what I need. Like I can build it once in this kind of baseline tenant and then push it across to everyone else. And so that started the journey. I did that I've been using the product for about 2 years, did it at my MSP, built it all up. And it was this past year at Ignite. It was kind of a game changer for me. Like I really saw where the industry's going, right? The rise of AI, the rise of all these things happening, passkeys, all, what's happening. And I was like, do I see myself at an MSP for the next 10 years trying to convince people to get off business standard because they need to go to business premium, or like, oh God. Man,
I can see it in Steve's eyes. Steve's just like,
yeah.
I feel you.
Oh God. Yeah. And like, it was just like, I really love day-to-day getting an enforcer. And so an opportunity opened up. I reached out and talked to my company. We're still very close. I left on very good terms. They just hit me up about an Azure issue literally last week. So I talk to them all the time. We did not leave on bad terms. But yeah, it kind of switched what I wanted to do in the industry. In this past year in January, I did move over to Enforcer, which is a UK based company. But we are in Australia, UK, really the Netherlands as well. And then over here in the States. So it's been quite an awesome journey for sure. I'm going to breathe right there. I feel like I talked a lot.
Nice. No, it was good. It's very good. I feel like Steve wants to jump in here, and I think I know why. But there was a lot of similarities actually. Listening to you, talking about your kind of early days and the migration from like on-prem to AVD. That's very similar to yourself, right, Steve? I think you did something similar.
Pretty much, yeah. Apart from the fact that I didn't touch VMware, I was very much a Hyper-V kind of guy.
Hyper-V.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did the same thing. So at the MSP that I worked at 2 acquisitions ago, we used System Center Virtual Machine Manager and failover clustering. So we essentially had clouds for all of our customers that we hosted in a data center, and they had their own virtual machine stack and everything. But it was all running on tin that we owned. And it wasn't long in fact, it was back when Azure was still in preview as Windows Azure. Our MD at the time was like, we need to get off the tin, we need to get onto Azure. And that was back in the days where we as an MSP had to put our credit card details into the Azure portal for the billing and everything. So yeah, I've been doing a very similar thing for a very long time. I think I'm probably about 2 or 3 years behind your current timeline. I'm still at the MSP, still fighting the good fight. Who knows? Maybe working at Enforcer in 2-3 years. We'll see.
God bless you. Hey.
Yeah, but yeah, very much on the same path and trajectory. I think really.
That's awesome.
I call myself an enabler because that's pretty much what I'm trying to do, is just enable everybody to do things better. But yeah, very much a similar path. Certainly with moving to Azure. Although you mentioned AVD during COVID, was that back when it was Windows Virtual Desktop?
Yeah, so it would have been Windows. We were very early, starting off like right after COVID. So it's probably more closer to 21 where we started that journey. And so when I left our MSP, we had everyone, they had fully migrated over to AVD using FS Logics. We did have a couple of clients that were using full-on cloud PCs, and it was just interesting, like, what they were doing specifically. I'm going to be honest, they were behind. I felt bad. I did one project for a cloud PC rollout, and we did Windows 10, and it was like at the end of life of Windows 10, but they needed it for a legacy app.
It's still extended. It gets longer if it's run on Azure and Microsoft on it. So yeah, it's still covered for now.
Yeah. But yeah, man. Yeah, the business standard to like business premium, just talk track is just like, I've blogged about it a couple of times, but it's like trying to convince people that like, hey, why are you doing this, guys? Like it's a
really good topic, and it's something that, because I mean, I used to work with Steve at an MSP where Steve is now, and in fact, it was prior to the last acquisition. We actually went through that phase, right, of trying to get people from business standard to business premium. And we actually took the approach, right, tell me if I'm wrong, Steve, I think we did a blanket upsell of business premium, didn't we? We basically 100%. Just told all of our clients, you have to be on Business Premium. That is the minimum license that we will sell. And we basically just put everybody onto Business Premium. The only way we could do it.
Yeah. And to be fair, the reason we did that was it provided us with the tools that we needed to keep the customer safe. And if they weren't prepared to invest in a license that enabled us to do that, then they weren't the right customer for us. I think we were very lucky at the old MSP. I don't know if you're going to be familiar with it, John, but our old MD followed the Robbins model of running an MSP. And she has this whole ethos around firing bad customers. You would fire a bad member of staff. Why would you not fire a bad customer? So our MD was really good at just saying to customers, we're not a good fit for each other. And when we did the blanket rollout of Business Premium, any customer that was like, I don't see the value in it, it's like, well, okay, that's fine. You don't see the value in us. So we agreed to part ways, and it worked out really well. We got customers investing in all the right things. And I can probably predict why, John, when you say why you're using Business Standard, I think a lot of those customers still incorrectly see that as a way to license their emails and their Office products. And that's the mentality that they're in. It's, I need to buy this license so I can have Office and emails. And it's like the world is not that world anymore. Everything has changed. But we're still fighting that old school mentality of it's just a way of getting Office and emails. It's like, it's not. It's not.
Yeah, I did a blog post on this exact topic. I called the customer conversation because it really clicked for me. We had a customer come to us that had a business email compromise. And the first question I asked, they were like, hey, can you look through our logs for us? And I was like, sure, yeah. I was like, did you set them up to log analytics? Like, what do you want me to do? And they were like, what's that? And I was like, okay. I was like, well, so what does your conditional access look like? And he said, I just heard about it yesterday. And I said, oh, God, okay. It did not look good, to say the least. And so it kind of struck me. We went on, this was like one of the C-levels, right? So they were in the middle of feeling pain. And I kept talking to them. And what I realized is that from us, right? Like we go home, we watch tech podcasts, we're talking tech, we're doing all these things, right? But the day-to-day customers, they see it as an expense that they don't need, right? So they look at Business Standard and they're like, yep, I got my email, I got my OneDrive, I'm good. And they're like, well, why are you doing this? And so one thing that clicked for me in that conversation was when I started to explain conditional access to him. He goes, he literally said this, and I think I put it in the blog post, but he goes, so basically I came to you and I asked you to show me what happened based on my cloud logs, right? He was associating cloud to AD. And I was like, yeah. And he said, and what you said back to me is I need to put a cloud-based firewall in front of those identities. And I said, 100%. Yes, that is kind of what I'm saying, right? And so it's interesting that people, the old MSP mentality hasn't shifted where they see like, okay, you had an AD server and you have to spin up a new office. Cool. We need an AD server and we need a firewall. No question. If I say, hey, go purchase a $4,000, $5,000 Fortinet firewall, no issues. Meraki firewall, whatever the case may be. But the second you try to get them from a CapEx to like an OpEx model where they have to switch that mindset, it's a complete just juxtaposition. They don't want it. No, why would I do that? Well, your identities are no longer sitting in that office on that physical device. They're cloud accessible. Remember COVID? Remember you wanted to use Teams from home and you wanted to do this and this? It's all up in the cloud. It's all accessible. So the firewall has to shift. That on-prem firewall no longer is the thing that's protecting it. And so I think for me, that mind shift is really what I'm noticing, that a lot of people just aren't making that in the industry. And if they could do that, I think it becomes an easier conversation. So I don't know.
I think they're moving that way. I used to have a customer that every time I went in with a new product or service, he always used to joke. He used to say, CapEx is for Christmas, OpEx is for life. And that was his mantra with everything that was a monthly cost. He was like, I'm committing to this forever or indefinitely. But I think we've discussed it as well in previous episodes. There definitely seems to have been more acceptance since COVID, I think, around, okay, well, if I want a service in place that's going to continue to be a good service, it's going to improve, it's going to add new features, it's going to continue to add value to the reason I'm using it. It needs to be a monthly reoccurring cost or a reoccurring cost of some sort. You can't expect to buy something once and have it continue to improve and get better. So there is definitely a mentality shift that's certainly in the UK MSP space. I've seen customers become more adopting to it. I don't know what it's like on your side of the pond.
It's rough on this side of the pond, I'll tell you. I'll tell you.
Yeah, I've heard from a few others over in the US that it's tough. Yeah,
it's Yeah.
John, you hit the nail on the head there. It's people want to get their email. So they see, right, business standard, that's going to be licensee, so just need email. They just don't think about the other stuff because they've always just had access to email. Even if, a small company won't have a separate security team, but they spin up an office somewhere, put in a router. They probably haven't even got a proper firewall, but they've got some kind of level of protection. They've got everything set behind a ISP managed router or something. And that way, sound like I'm on.
I'm going to say it sounds like Andy's mic's in the next room.
Wasn't sure whether it was just me or not.
No, yeah.
Is that any better?
Nope.
I don't know. No, hang on.
You're definitely not. You're definitely not on the road mic.
No.
What about now?
Oh,
wait,
beautiful. That's real good.
For some reason, it switched me across. So yeah, when you're running in a small office, you get your ISP will give you a router, so you don't even think about firewalls. So when you see the Microsoft, package offerings, business standard is so much, business premium is going to be this much, they're automatically going to go for the cheapest. I just need email, need Teams, need SharePoint. So why do I need to think about that? So it's not even a case of they've thought about on-prem firewalls, because that's always taken care of by a third-party solution, whether it's ISP or whoever. But I really like that mentality, Steve, that you had, that you basically sack clients, whereas if they don't have a standard, and you need to set some kind of level, a benchmark. So you need that level of basic security.
Yeah.
And
our old MD was really good in saying to a customer, if you're not prepared, and he did it with everything, not just security, but like if a customer bought a non-perpetual license for, like, I don't know, Sage, for example, but they wouldn't pay for ongoing Sage support, he said, well, that's fine, but don't expect us to support it. If you're not going to invest in the stack, we're not going to give you our time for free because you're not prepared to make an investment, because why would we? And he was really good at stuff like that, to be fair. And I think with the business premium uplift, it was such a relief, certainly I think for Nathan, because it allowed him to cookie cutter his approach or his framework. Obviously he tailored it for every business, but he knew the tools he was playing with and the everything that he had at his disposal, which is a great place to be.
This business premium, you can, in the UK, you can meet Cyber Essentials with business premium.
Current version or upcoming version, because they're about to move those goalposts quite a bit, with the patching and stuff. Yeah,
but you can meet some level of certification with the business premium, but business standard you can't. Obviously, E3 and E5 you can do way more, but it's becoming a standard. You have to meet some kind of certification for a business.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, E3 and E5 are getting a few new bells and whistles in July, but business premium, like, it's hands down just like
it's a beast of a license, isn't it?
It's like unreal. It's so good. So good if you're on
especially when you start talking about AI. Like, let's just be honest, that's the industry's having a ton of conversations. So when you look at things like, okay, with business premium, you get Defender for cloud apps. You may not get full capabilities to, necessarily sanction and unsanctioned, but you get the capabilities at least to see the visibility of what's happening in the infrastructure, see that shadow AI usage. Purview sensitivity labels, Elena, I watch all her videos. She's great. God bless her.
Absolutely. When it comes to purview.
Right.
Plus the thing is, as well, is if you wet your whistle on the business premium license and then you think, actually we need this but more, great, you've got the add-on licenses now.
Exactly.
You've got Purview for Business and Defender for Business as add-ons to kind of give you that uplift. So I think it's Microsoft are almost turning into the crack dealers of this sort of industry. Either like, here's a taste, do you like that? Okay, well, if you want more, I've got. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's really good at just giving them a taste.
It's just that limit of business premium. It's as soon as you hit that 300 mark. I get it, but actually there are a lot of businesses that are probably over 300 that don't need the full enterprise suite. I would argue, but that's just a licensing and revenue thing for Microsoft, I would say. Maybe they have to.
Yeah, I mean they have to draw the line somewhere, but you have to also be really careful. There's a what irks me the most, and again, the kind of gap is getting smaller with the additions in July. But that move from business premium to E3 is such a pain because you lose the EDR from Defender for Endpoint. Currently, you lose MDOP1. I know that's been brought back in July, and it's like it's so frustrating. But I guess they have to draw the line somewhere, right?
That was one of the biggest things I thought was the MDO, the fact you get that in Business Premium, but not in E3.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, the killer for me really is the. I mean, MDO absolutely plays a huge part in it, but the EDR piece is just madness to me. It's like because your customers just got used to having, all of the best bits of Defender for Endpoint. Now they have to move to E3, and they've just dropped straight down to just AV only, and it's like, come on.
See
but
my
again,
previous statement, like crack dealers.
Exactly.
E5,
because now
E5.
they can take E3 plus the Defender suite, or go straight to E5, or if you're balling, E7.
E7, come on.
E7 all the way. Come on.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So look, I mean, we kind of veered off a little bit there. There's definitely like an entire conversation around Business Premium by itself. But one of the things we kind of talked about and discussed a lot throughout that kind of process was conditional access, right? And it is, fundamental nowadays towards any good security posture strategy around Microsoft 365. And it's something that I know all of us on this call are passionate about. But John, you have spent a little bit of time, a little's probably not fair, probably a lot of time, building a pretty cool solution, right? That I would love for you to kind of walk through and just share with the guys and share with anyone listening.
I would love that. So let me share out my screen, and you guys let me know if you can see it. I hope I do this correctly. Yep, I got 2. Here we go. All right. Can you see conditional access policy?
Can indeed.
I can.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. So let's just kind of let's talk about it. And Nate, you probably don't even know this, but you kind of inspired the creation of this. So basically, what happened was I was curating kind of all the conditional access stuff into my GitHub that I use, the framework that I built for my company. So if you go to my GitHub, which I can send you guys a link to this, it's basically my manifesto of everything I've ever looked at, the research I've done, MVPs, Nate, Rue, my one of my coworkers, Louis Berry, Yelena's stuff. She's got great stuff. And I was basically trying to get all of the links to help people out, right? Like what service principals aren't registered correctly, any of the gotchas within the policies. And then I showcase and I included my framework of what I built. So there was a way that I did it at my organization, and I took a layered approach to how I deployed out conditional access. So if you think about it, right, every customer, there's foundational policies that they need to have in place. It's kind of insane to me. I see a lot of people's conditional access on a day-to-day. It's actually, I'm amazed at what people do and don't do when it comes to conditional access. Saw one the other day. The guy had 3 policies. They were all in report only. He was like, I have conditional access. I was like, you have conditional access. You're just not enforcing conditional access. Yeah. There is a subtle difference in that.
I've seen that quite a lot, to be fair, where a project's either not been fully finished or they had problems during implementation. And like you said, you have conditional access, but it's still in the packaging. It's still on the shelf. You haven't opened it. You're not using it right now. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. So what I did is I built out this was the framework that we use for our clients, and foundation was like, you had to have it, right? You need P1 licensing. You have to have the foundational policies. Baseline is where we really started to kind of increase the posture of security, right? So you'll notice like there were some passkeys. Great conversation we had last week there, boys. But yeah, like getting passkeys in play, like separating out the conversation of your daily driver and administrative role should not be tied. They should not be together, right? They should be separated. You should have a separate administrator account. Starting to really harden the break glass accounts, your security information requirements, things of that nature, right? And then we had a lot of customers where we did app specific. We wanted to lock down AVD to certain regions, SharePoint, OneDrive. Maybe we had DevOps. We use DevOps for a lot of our automation. Then we'd go into like an Intune policy. So all of these things, zero trust conditional access. If you watch a Nate Hutchinson and Rue Campbell video, you hear a lot about these. I personally I took a unique approach to Zero Trust. So like I was not brave enough to do 160 policies and turn this on and make sure every persona knew everything about it. But I did deploy these out for one purpose, and that purpose was incident response. We don't think about what happens when the incident's already occurred. And so one of the things with having enforcers, I had a way to get in kind of under the scenes using a service principal. And so I would pre-stage these. And if there was an incident, I could turn them on and just immediately block everything at a moment's instance. And then after Ignite, I started playing around with agents, which now agents are just starting to hurt my head. So we're gonna expand this out. But anyway, all of this is to say that I built all this out, and then Nate and I were actually talking about, I was doing some token protection stuff, and he was like, I'd be interested to hear what you're doing there. And that was really all you said. And I was like, you know what? I ran into all these issues, and I was like, wouldn't it be awesome if I just had a tool where I could bring all of this together and just expose it and then look at an environment. And what that basically turned into was CA Policy Analyzer. And so what this is it's hosted on my GitHub. It's a GitHub pages. It's going to connect in, and let's not pretend like I'm an amazing developer here. I'm not, guys. Like Claude Opus is amazing. Vibe coding is a real thing. Like I don't want you to be like, wow, this guy knows this. No, I know how to use Claude very effectively. But what I do have is I've got a lot of experience with conditional access, talking to people, understanding what we need. And so what I did is I tried to pull that together and really kind of build out a product that I could use, even if just for troubleshooting. I still have to troubleshoot a ton of conditional access here at Enforcer. It's a constant thing. And so it's just really helpful having something that can say, hey, run this real quick, give me your export, let's take a look at what we might find. And so you'll notice I'm constantly making changes. I just included a change log in the product just because there's so much changing in the industry. I'm working on building some automation to keep track of what Microsoft's doing on the back end, and it sends me an alert, and then I go review it, and I go, oh yeah, I need to add this, whatever the case may be. A lot of the recent stuff was around break glass and guest access. I was dealing with a customer who had some very unique ideas around how to protect guests, and I'll kind of showcase that. But yeah, so this is the product, and essentially, if you click on this link, what it's going to do is it's going to pull you into this tool right here, and you go in, connect in, and this is CA Policy Analyzer. Can you guys see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we can see that.
Okay,
yeah.
I was going to say I can make it bigger if need be. But the idea is there's a certain subset of things that I want to know at a high glance. Being in the US, everybody kind of aligns to CIS. So I wanted to incorporate CIS. I wanted to incorporate information back to my policies, and I'll kind of go left to right here and show you what we got here. So on the dashboard, we pull in the tenant ID. We're going to pull in a list of all the policies. I'm going to scroll it out just a bit here. So if we go to the dashboard, you're going to see a few things here. So dashboard is going to be basically overall view of what the conditional access looks like, disabled, enabled, report only. And then there's a couple of metrics we're securing off. CIS alignment, so you can see that's what a lot of people probably care about. Template coverage, and then config quality. So config quality is how many exclusions, where are we seeing gaps, things of that nature. If there are a lot of gaps, then we're going to call that out. And there's a whole metric it goes off of. The detected license. This is one of the things I was like very adamant about, because CIS is like, hey, you got to put P2 in. Well, I don't have P2. I got business premium. The other thing is, this one actually took me a bit to get going, the workload ID premium. A lot of people don't know about that license and how to protect service principals using that. But I'm a big proponent of that, especially when it comes to like interconnect sync or things like Enforcer, like protecting the Enforcer app. So
sorry, can I just ask, with the detected licenses, is that just for the feature enablement on the tenant? So if I've got one license and it unlocks that feature, that shows green, or yeah?
Exactly. And the idea is it's supposed to, it's going to show you, so like you'll see it over in CIS where it's going to recommend P2 level policies, but they're going to be grayed out because it's not going to, so it's not going to affect your CIS score because you can't do those policies, right? So like you can only adhere to the L1 standard that you would hit. So that was the idea of that, is to have this in play. And then to highlight some of the risk here, and we'll kind of go through that, and I'll show you some stuff here. So the policy tab, there's a couple things to note here. So the policy tab is every individual policy broken out and what you want to see. One of the things that I always hate, and you can see it here, is obviously the Microsoft managed policies. I immediately want to hide those. So I just hide those. I don't use them. I'm going to hide those. We're going to put them out. And then I'm going to sort it by most findings. So most findings is basically saying, hey, based on the policy, what are we seeing here security wise? This has changed recently. So the idea around the findings, here's just a typical global grant MFA for all users, right? So what are we looking at? Well, from an info perspective, I want to see if the break glass account is excluded. So it's using some logic on the back end, because some people may use a random name, some people may use a group. So it's actually looking to see if you've excluded from a subset of policies. And this is where testing comes in. Like there's a number of tenants, it's immediately detected, even if it was like a weird name, just because they had good posture where they were excluding it from a lot of accounts. But I'm pretty sure there's going to be more testing needed with this portion. But
so is the tool essentially then it's making the assumption that because this account is excluded from so many policies of a certain time,
exactly.
If I was to protect my break glass account with its own subset of policies, which we should all be doing, we shouldn't just be blanket excluding break glass from our existing working stack and not protecting it with its own. Would that throw off the tool potentially?
I'm wondering. I do need to get more, because I thought of that same exact concept of well, what if I have a CA global exclusion group and my break glass and they're all excluded? How is it going to know, right? And so I did that, but I didn't exclude CA global exclusion from as many. And so it was oh, this is your break glass. And I was like, oh, dang. Okay. But I do need to do some additional testing where it's I have multiple things, or maybe I just put a random user, just Harry Potter excluded from every account. I think Harry Potter's your break glass. It's maybe.
Maybe you could just build an option to specify it in the actual platform, and then it knows.
Yeah, I think Maester did something like that.
Yeah, that's right. I think Maester did.
Yeah. So I that will probably inevitably be I'd love to see it in Enforcer and just let Enforcer do that. So we'll see how all that kind of works out. But let me show you. So some of the ideas around, you'll see some medium stuff here. So one of the things, I've got to make sure I give credit where credit is due, right? A lot of the backend database, when it's coming to exclusion gaps, all comes from Fabian Batter and Dirk Jan, right? They've done tremendous research in this area. So a lot of it, and I even credit it on the login screen, hey, I'm pulling a lot of this stuff from interest scopes. That stuff also, that research has recently changed. So I had it update some of the logic there, because one of the things that they used to call out was anytime you excluded one service principal at all, right? If you excluded one, there were some low-level scopes within Microsoft that got excluded. And so that behavior has now just been updated. So this used to call out a high-level thing, hey, you got 3 apps excluded. These are now excluded by default. That is no longer going to be the case, I believe. What is it? As of March, they started rolling that out with the low-level scopes. Yeah. So calling some of that information out. But one of the things is think of coming into an MSP where you haven't been for a long time, and you want to just look at, kind of go through the policies. Well, what's excluded? Okay, so here's MFA for all user. Well, why do I have Microsoft management's rights management services excluded? Well, maybe you don't know what that is. Maybe you've been in the industry for a while, you know that's part of the AIP, and the fact that if you don't exclude that, you're using sensitivity labels or certain data, right, encrypting, that you're going to get that RPMSG message, and everyone's going to be upset and why am I getting this? So the idea was to call those things out and to basically give you some information so that you can then go in and make a reasonable kind of understanding of why you have these gaps. So I called them out, and I basically talk about, hey, you may want to go look at this.
Does it do the inverse? Sorry.
Yeah.
So if you hadn't excluded it, would it go, by the way, this may be causing you issues, or it may cause technical?
Yeah, so I don't think so today. I'm amazed at people who are testing it and they're finding things, and I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. So actually, that's a great question. So I had this come up. I had someone test out the tool. Let me see if I got the screenshot. So this was a policy that someone was testing. They were trying to block all country codes, and they blocked access based on countries, and it pointed out, hey, your cloud apps isn't set to all cloud apps. And it just basically said, you're not actually doing anything because you're not targeting a resource.
What, it was targeting no resource at all?
Exactly. Because the mindset was, but I'm already blocking these countries. And it's well, that's not how conditional access works. If it doesn't actually target a resource, it can't fulfill the request. Yeah. So it literally pointed that out and was GeoBlock doesn't do anything if you don't have the resource to actually protect.
Yeah.
So
it's like
this
putting
is
your car in neutral and flooring it, isn't it? It's like, you're not going anywhere, mate. Pick a gear.
exactly. Exactly. So there's been use cases where I'm like, I didn't even think about that. And it just points it out. So like, this is where I need people to test the tool, give me feedback. I've got a couple of guys that I work with that are doing this internally. And so a lot of it's just me getting on calls, testing things, and then people give me feedback. Because again, I want to make it as useful to everyone to be able to go in.
To your point there, Steve, as well, though, like that's a really great example of a feature or a recommendation set for that. So, you know, you've obviously built the logic into this to say, well, if the Microsoft Rights Management app is excluded, here's why it's excluded. But there's probably going to be a lot of organizations out there that aren't excluding it and don't know why they should exclude it. So, having the capability to kind of pick that up and recommend it would definitely be like a cool feature.
You've already got the logic for the best practice. You're just only using it to justify exceptions, but it might be worth using it to highlight inclusions and stuff as well. Exactly. But yeah, most of my questions are probably going to be very, I don't know, stupid.
I love it. I love it. No, I love it.
But I'm currently working on my own set of baselines for lots of stuff. So I will probably take this for a spin on my baseline tenant, if you don't mind, just to see what it finds, what it does, what it looks like.
Please do. So this was a recent ad. So I actually had a customer who came to me and they asked me to look at their conditional access. And so I did. And this is a replica of their policy. But what I noticed is they had an interesting approach. Instead of taking break glass accounts, they weren't actually using break glass. What they were doing is they were excluding anyone with the global admin role on its own. And I said, okay, that's a unique approach. I don't like that approach. Let's be completely honest. I was like, that's like making your break glass group a dynamic group and anyone just finds what metadata they need and they get into it. Like no, it should be very, consistent and precise on where you're going. So I called that out. So like I worked through the logic and I was like, this is some of the reasons why you shouldn't do that, right? From an attack vector perspective, all a user has to do is understand that what this policy is doing, and then they can inevitably they're all trying to get up to global admin. So if you're just blocking admin roles like that, no, that is not the same as having a prescribed break glass account in there. So some of the things that we found from the policy, that was one of them. The other one was he had grant controls. So this is part of Fabian's kind of research, right? Where the weakest control wins. So if you're doing and versus or, right? Like if you're like, hey, you can be intra-joined or intra-registered. Well, intra-registered is going to take precedence because you said or, not and, right? So the idea of like having the correct syntax when you're building them. He also did a very unique thing. So he excluded all global admin rules. He also excluded all guest user types. So if we kind of go back to that little breakdown right here, right? There's 6 guest user types. He was excluding all of them. And I was kind of thrown off because I didn't know what to say to him. And he was like, yeah, but there was an article like where I needed to do this. And I said, there's a lot with guests to digest. But like that is a bad practice. And I was trying to explain to him that like there are certain guest types, right? And so I put it in the thing where they're considered local users in your thing. Like I'm completely aware of the external collaboration feature. You want to trust the tenant on the home tenant side, right? So you can do phishing resistant MFA and things of that nature. It's a great practice. But I was like, you shouldn't just blanket exclude all guests. So I can
fully understand how that's happened or why somebody would think, oh, this is what I need to do to fix the issue that I've just caused with this new conditional access policy. I've seen it loads. It's like we've enforced policies and then suddenly sharing links have stopped working because external parties are getting prompted for information or they can't satisfy conditional access, and the customer immediately just goes, you need to turn it off. You just need to just exclude my guests. So it's good that you're highlighting that in the way that you are, because I can fully understand the mentality behind how it got there.
Yeah. Yep. No, for sure. And another one I see a lot of time. I've been on probably a ton of support calls in the past week. I know there's been at least 50 tenants I've looked at over the past week and a half that they just haven't made the switch from the old custom controls to the new external authentication methods. And so they fail to understand that like, because there's not a tie-in, right? Like you're not going to be able to fulfill that MFA requirement. And it happens a lot around GDAP conversations because they're like, oh, well, yeah, but I'm using, MFA. Well, yeah, you're using MFA with Duo custom controls. Unless you've created those users over in Duo, they don't exist. They will never be able to fulfill that MFA request. So that one comes up quite a lot as well. So we've got some checks.
Do they show us ESAM or something in the portal, the external MFA things? Because we migrated all of our Duo customers over to that a while ago, so they now show up in authentication strengths, and Conditional Access understands that that's a thing.
Yeah, so I mean, it's EM. So if we go under authentication methods, I have both in this tenant, right? So I've got my Duo external authentication method. Yep, right there. So we've got that, but then you still got a ton that have, oh God, where's the old custom control? Wherever it's under conditional access, right? Yeah. So you've still got this legacy custom control where it's like, hey, so I had a buddy, he actually had an old policy that was still targeting this. He didn't even realize he had it. He ran the tool and it called out, hey, you've got required Duo MFA custom control. Do you mean to have that? And he was like, I didn't even realize that was still in play. So it calls out. It's
That's good.
It's done.
So it's finding the breadcrumbs. It's finding the breadcrumbs and bringing them forward, right?
It really is, yeah. So I mean, it's done. It's done a number of things. I will say this database is getting very hard to maintain, the all finds, because there's just so much. So like this is pulling into like Fabian's Swiss cheese model, app exclusions, trying to locate that. But one of the things I want to touch on is so we added the break glass recently, and then right before that, what I did is locations. So trying to call out locations, and we have an entire tab on this. And actually, I'll probably just skip over those real quick and show you. So the idea is a lot of people get themselves in trouble because they create configurations where, hey, I'm allowing all trusted locations, but they forget to mark as trusted or whatever the case may be. So the idea is with the locations tab, I can quickly go, okay, I've got an ISC block countries. Who are my countries that I'm blocking? Okay, great. I can quickly take a look at those. My trusted locations. Okay, yep, you have a trusted location. But it's not marked as trusted. So call it out. And it'll call it out in the policy as well. Hey, you're trusting all locations, but you have 7 locations that are not currently trusted right now. So
that's interesting. So just to touch on that, sorry. So me personally, I'm not a fan of just using blanket trusted locations. Instead, I make everything a little bit more intentional and just use named locations by default, and then make sure that I'm using it. Because my concern would be is if somebody before me, and I think I'm just going to mention it after this about this tool, but if somebody before me created a location as trusted and they accidentally put, I don't know, the one IP of a shared office or a managed space, and then I create another policy down the line and I go, right, I'm assuming that my trusted locations consists of actual, premises that the customer owns, etc. I'm going to exclude trusted locations. I'm accidentally encompassing certain things that I might not appreciate at the time that I'm encompassing, which can happen just with years of organic growth of a tenant, as more features and more different companies, different admins have managed it, etc. This stuff happens. So I've always tried to abstain away from using trusted. I don't know if that's bad practice on my part. I just find it allows me to be a little bit more. So I do the same on firewalls. I'll never just put all LAN zones. I'll always specifically scope to the VLANs that I want to include in the policy rather than just going all LAN, all external, etc. I don't know if it's maybe just a bad habit on my part. I don't know, but
I don't think that's a bad habit, right? I think security being intentional comes back to the same argument of passkeys, right? Synced versus device bound. Like you should be intentional. You should only allow people to do certain things. I just know, so for me, we had a lot of our policies around trusted location were for AVD, right? And so we had one organization, there were 480 users. They had 16 different sites, multiple circuits. And so we had to maintain those as trusted locations so that internally they could get to the AVD. Obviously, you bring up great points, right? Shared office spaces is a huge thing, anything where there's the potential there. So being intentional about it, I wouldn't say it's a bad practice. It's more just what I've seen from my perspective that they're going to try to block certain things based on a trusted environment. I mean, people still try to just say, hey, exclude MFA if you're in a trusted location. And I have to have that conversation all the time. Just because you're in and on the trusted doesn't mean they can't send a phishing link, gain access, and then they're in too. We're all trusted here. So I always fall back to my saying of security is hard. I don't think there's not one way to do this that I think is right or wrong. There's just kind of what you learn over time, what you do, and trying to make it work to the best of your ability. But I love your approach. I don't think there's anything wrong with that in the slightest.
I think one of the things that I think that this tool will be really handy for is highlighting what I mentioned previously about just organic growth and change on a 365 tenant, because it's okay me going in now, putting in conditional access and, doing the best of today's standards. But if in 18, 24 months time, another admin comes in and he thinks, oh, well, the guy before me knew what he was doing, he must have done a really good job. We're all people, stuff happens, stuff changes, exceptions are added. So tools like this just kind of keep you honest, if you will. And
everything just evolves. Even over 6 months to a year, things evolve. So you need to update it to encompass the new changes. And it's the whole zero trust mindset is it's not set and go away and forget about it. It's just continually monitor it and adapt for the evolution.
It never becomes more obvious than when you put out a blog post with your opinions in it and everyone goes, nope, you're wrong. And this is why. I found that one out very quick, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing. It's constantly changing. So I'll tell you guys about these two tabs as well, just in case, because I think they're fun, but the templates tab was really for me. So I say this in the document. I built this for me, like assuming that I had to go and deploy a project out. I wanted kind of my template of like, hey, do you see this policy doesn't match, and it's pulling back from my GitHub. So it's basically looking at my GitHub. So if I update things there, it's supposed to update here. Let's say that. But inevitably what this does is, say, for instance, like I actually did this. And one of the things that was pointed out was my all admins tab. So CIS had changed some of the recommendations. Originally, it was like 14 roles, which I think Microsoft still recommends. Like if you look at, oh, wow, that got really large there. If you look at Microsoft's, I think they have one. Yeah, it was like 14 of the 43. But the idea is as the recommendations change, like say, for instance, I have the JSON for all these. So you can go, instead of having to go find my portal, go find the policy, you could just download it. So like say for instance, I wanted to import this one. Oh goodness. Well, I had it all locked up. I could just come in here and upload a policy file. So I downloaded that raw JSON, which just went into, let's see what's going to happen here. See analysis.
You are sharing your screen, just FYI.
I am sharing my screen. I was like, hey, I don't know what's going to happen here. Hold on, let's get it. But essentially what you could do is you can upload that JSON file, because at this point, I don't know where it went in my downloads somewhere. But yeah, so you can upload that file directly into here, and then you can just rename it. And it's a great use case. Get people, the policies that I have in the tool, and kind of make that work.
So that's reviewing live policies against your templates, right? It's essentially what that's doing. Right. Okay.
Exactly.
Great. Selfishly, can we use our own templates to do that?
So right now that would not be in it, but that would be right. Like that would make sense, right? And that's kind of the whole concept behind Enforcer, right? Is you put all yours into Enforcer, and then you have all 160, and you can go in. That would be something I would have to figure out how to make work. Whereas like, hey, just for the template section, go ahead and put your own custom, GitHub and pull their templates in, right? So that's a great ask as well. Let me see how I could do that. What I think a lot of people are going to care about, I'm going to be honest, is the CIS portion. So they don't care like, hey, John's got all these policies. That's great. Okay, do I meet CIS alignment? And so in the CIS tab, I do a couple of things. One, you'll see I link to Delta Pulse with like updates and changes happening in the industry to kind of call out like, hey, you have an MFA for all users. I don't know if you know, but Microsoft just made a change recently. Go check out the link on Delta Pulse to see what changes are coming with those low level scopes that are missing. But at the end of the day, it's checking to say, hey, does this meet what CIS is looking for this policy? So one of the things you'll see here is like, if I wanted to just separate based on L1, I could separate it based on L1. One of the things we called out is unsupported devices are blocked. Well, it's manual. So it calls out what the policy is. And it says, hey, this is a report only. It's not currently enforced. So I could come over here. I could go.
And do they all have accompanying Microsoft Learn documentation links as well?
I have tried. I just noticed the other day some of them were wrong, so I updated them. But yes, they're all supposed to have an accompanying Microsoft Learn, and this is where the crowd crowdsourcing comes in. So if you see something off, let me know. But the idea is like, so okay, I understand. Yep. We're good. I don't know if what I just did there, it's fine. I'm not reading it at this point. But ideally, like the idea is, okay, I turned it on. So, right now it's showing manual. Theoretically, I should be able to resync, demo fails aside. but it should go from 2 manual to 12 passing 1, because the only issue wasn't that the policy didn't match. It was just that it wasn't turned on. So this is the kind of the whole idea. And it doesn't actually look like it resync, again, guys, it's a work in progress.
One, it's a live demo. Two, it's a Microsoft minute.
Exactly. But it will update. It'll update. It'll showcase that, hey, this has been turned on. So next time we go and run that check, it'll say, hey, here's what you need to do. But this is the whole concept, right? And we can even see, block device code flow, authentication flow conditions. So the idea here is really just to see how in alignment to CIS you are, how things are going. And then we have the locations tab, which we already kind of touched on, and the MS Learn, which is where I'm trying to call out any things that are changing. So like, say, for instance, that Duo MFA one that I call. So we go into the fact that external authentication methods, could block external vendors. You need to look at that. One of the ones you talked about with Andy, you mentioned just the changes in the industry, right? So one of the things I got some flack on was when I pushed out one of the policies, one of the architects saw that I was excluding directory synchronization accounts. Well, if you run Maester checks for that. It says, hey, you should be excluding directory synchronization accounts from your MFA for all users, because inevitably you're going to block the interconnect. But then he brought up a really good point. Interconnect, as of 2576, was updated to use application-based authentication. So really, there shouldn't be a need. If you're maintaining Microsoft's best practices and you're staying up to date, you should be using application-based authentication. So I was like, great point, but people also shouldn't be running Server 2008, and they still are. So let's talk about that as well if we want to get into the old security discussion.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, not one for today. I think we're running short on time, aren't we?
Yeah.
But I could sit and wax lyrically with you about this sort of stuff for hours and hours and hours, I think.
Yeah, and maybe we do another session with Jon. Come back on, and we can do some deep dives into it. It's really interesting to see the product though, the tool that you've created.
It's great.
As you're sort of walking through it, I'm sat there thinking maybe there's a way to introduce some sort of zero trust module. So how well do your policies map to certain personas? And maybe give you sort of like percentages around that. That would be pretty cool. Because like you say, that's kind of the framework, if you like, that I usually kind of try and stick to.
Who was that? Was that Klaus that did that original person?
Yeah.
No, that's great, man. That's so good.
Yeah, it is good, but it is there's a lot to it. There's a hell of a lot to it. So it's not for everybody. But yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Look, I mean, we are unfortunately coming up on time, but it has been super cool to have you on. Awesome tool. Very, very, very good. I will leave links in the podcast description to your GitHub repo so people can find it. Should they want to have a play with it? And I guess everyone should, right? Everyone should go away, everyone should play with it, and then they should ping you with all of the issues and the new feature requests that they want.
Yeah, pull requests, issues. Yeah.
Dude, I released it, and the first week, the first thing that was asked was, is this working Gov? And I was like, oh God, like DOD. And I was like, no, it doesn't. There's all separate APIs. I was like, have you done Gov? No. Oh, so yeah.
That's brilliant. Welcome to the software development.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Steve will have a play around with it, because I know you're in the process of coming up with some CA stuff now as well. So that should be good.
Awesome, Steve.
Yeah. So look, I'll take this as an opportunity to get wrapped up. Jon, thank you so much for joining us. Let's do it again. Let's arrange another call, and we'll try and get you back on the podcast, and we can chat a little bit more. Andy, Steve, as always, it was awesome, and we'll see you all in the next episode.
Cheers, Jon.
Thanks for watching.
Cheers, guys. Yeah, guys.
Thanks. Cheers all.
Bye.